welcome to the podcast. I'm Coach Tyler, and I'm here with Dr. Lisa today. We're in a giggly mood today this morning. I love it. It's a good way to start the podcast.
It is.
You know, and that's probably a good thing because today we're going to be talking about playful, joyful movement, which is something that we talk about a lot at WeShape because to me, I think the fitness industry has made exercise into this thing that's like rooted in self-punishment. It's just something we have to do, and it's a chore and a task, and I don't want to do it, and blah, blah, blah. And if we could actually re-experience the joy that children have when they move and start just reconnecting with ourselves in that way, that people would like it a whole lot more.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's why I'm so excited today, because today we have Kara Latta on the show. So Kara, I would love to dive straight in by asking you, how did you discover the value of playful movement? How did you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so my background comes from working in public relations for 10 years. So I was working at various agencies. I knew burnout very well. I was very much perfectionist, people pleaser. Any kind of movement I did, honestly, was driven by perfectionism and having to be good at something. Like I was a competitive dancer. I was competitive about board games. I was competitive about everything. So I didn't really know how to enjoy things for the sake of it. And I was really disconnected from that sense of playfulness and from my inner child. And so I was on this journey. I was going to therapy, which was really, really valuable, and I really recommend to everyone. But I just noticed that my life overall was so heavy, and like even my healing, like everything was just so heavy and so serious. And so then when 2020 came around, I lost my job in March 2020 with the budgets going for marketing departments. And for me, it was actually a really big gift because I suddenly had more time with myself. And my therapist at the time recommended, like, girl, you need some play and joy in your life. Like things are so serious. I had a relationship end. I had some health issues as well. So there was just like a lot crumbling in my life at that time. And so for me, now that I had lost my job, I had a bit more time. I realized I had this nudge towards rediscovering play as an adult because I was so disconnected from it. And so then what I did was I went on this search for like, okay, how can I tap into playful movement and play? And I actually had a really hard time finding resources for how to do that. I found a lot of science behind play. I found books about play. So it was really cool for the like nerd within me who like loved learning about why play is so important for your brain and your body. But like the actual how to play for adults, kind of dummies 101, I could not find that. And so I just went on my own journey, and this was not a business idea at all. It was just for my own healing journey of trying to tap into more playfulness. And for me, that was about letting go of the pressure and the rigidity I put around myself when it came to playing, which had formerly been just about proving myself. And because for me, you know, I thought back to that little girl within who, when I was really young, I remember dancing around the house like animals or just being so in my body where it was such a joyful experience. But then with time, you start worrying about how you look when you're moving. You start noticing your body and start judging it. And it becomes this experience more about, proving your worth. Whereas, so for me, it was like, okay, how can I unlearn all of that? So I started doing one playful thing a day just for myself and really connecting with my inner child. And as I did that, I noticed, wow, like I'm feeling so much healthier. I'm feeling so much more creative. I'm feeling like I'm deepening relationships with people. I'm bringing this new side of myself. So I noticed all the science in practice actually happening. And then from there, that was kind of what sparked it, like, oh, I actually need to bring play to the world because adults are so incredibly play deprived. And like you said, in the industry you are in, it's really so sad how it is so about rigidity and perfectionism. And so it's been so healing now to bring that to other people as well.
I love that you are doing that. It reminds me of, I don't know if y'all saw like the semi-viral like reels that were going around. It was black men frolicking. And so it's just the different guys popping on the screen. They're like, oh, we're frolicking. And they're like holding their phone up and like running in the grass. And it was so beautiful, one, because it's like men, right? So they're definitely not stereotypically seen running and playing and frolicking, you know, in the fields. But it was so refreshing.
You haven't hung around me at a park enough.
Well, Tyler, you are a special kind of guy. But you know, stereotypically men aren't doing those things. So it's just really cool to see. But this reminds me of that, this idea that like letting go of the rules, the societal expectations, and deciding like, I'm going to do something fun. I'm going to do something that gets me in touch with my inner child. And even if you don't know that's what you're doing, just that freedom to play. So I want to know, when you started to make that transition, like, was it kind of awkward for you, or was it okay? Yeah, that's what I want to hear about. Was
yeah,
it difficult to even
so
get
awkward.
into?
It was so, honestly, it was so uncomfortable. And I have this vivid moment I remember in Toronto, Canada, where I am. I joined this dance group that wasn't really competitive, and my background was competitive dance. So I was kind of branching out of that. And for the very first warm up, it was a group of 200 of us. We were age 9 to 93, so it was intergenerational. And for the very first warm up, they asked us to just frolic around in the gym as if we were horses. And so they wanted us to like just like move and neigh and like be horses, and like that was so uncomfortable for me. My immediate reaction was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that at all. Like, why would I want to be a horse? And so what was really life-changing though was, so I was kind of off on the side and I was like, not doing that. And then I noticed these women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, one in her 90s, they start linking arms and just start frolicking and neighing, and they're like having the best time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's what I want. It's this sense of freedom that I don't have, that I don't give to myself. It's that lack of like, you know, fear of judgment, like just self-expression and freedom. And so that moment to this day has been so inspiring for me to like just be like, wow, okay, like, you know, this is so valuable. And so I remember that practice, like starting to try to like just like jump a little bit, and like it was really uncomfortable, but you know, I just kind of kept going with it. And then in my own practice, that is something I started to do, is like more uninhibited movement without choreography, or just like being a bit silly with it. And I know it felt very awkward and very uncomfortable for the first, I don't know, first couple months maybe, but with time it got better. And like now it's one of my favorite things to do, because I've just like freed myself and I've built more confidence to be able to do that. But yeah, it takes time. And I always say that to people, because people will be like, oh, this feels uncomfortable. That must mean it's not meant for me, or I'm just not playful. And it's like, no, with time it will feel better. It's just unfamiliar.
I love that, because I think so many of us walk around with this like shame of that freedom of expression, right? And I'll never forget when I first started working out at like a gym here locally. I walked around and I just noticed that everybody was trying to be seen in their own way. It's like everybody had to like wear the perfect thing and do this stuff. And I had this moment where I was like, this is going to distract me from why I'm here, right? And why I'm here is because I want to do a good workout. I don't want to get distracted by this lady over here, this guy over here. So I thought of a solution. And I wore the goofiest outfit I possibly could drum up and went to the gym with it. I said, hey, if I can handle the people looking at me and the shame of all this stuff, then I just don't have to worry about it anymore. And that was a really cool lesson for me. I was like, you know what? If you can just let go of the perceived judgment of others, then you can have that freedom back. And that's what it is about when it comes to joyful movement. It's about freedom. It's about giving yourself permission to be like a child again and not worry about what anybody else around you is thinking. But I love something you said in the beginning. I would love to touch back on this, because you were talking about how heavy your life was. And I think that a lot of people who work on themselves and do personal development end up at some point feeling like every moment is like processing this heaviness. And we can stay in that hyper vigilant loop of just like, this is a problem and I got to fix this and I got to fix that. And we think we're making all this great progress, but we're kind of stuck in constant like analyzation and criticism and all these pieces. And what joyful movement does for us is it allows us to say, we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. Right. So I'm wondering if you can kind of touch on the journey from, you know, I feel so heavy, I feel like this is so intense, to like this moment where you're watching old ladies gallop down there, and how you started to really integrate that. Like, how can people get over the shame and the judgment that they're perceiving as coming from others?
Yeah, so I did a few things. One of the first things that was really helpful was connecting with my inner child, like getting photos of myself as that little girl and putting them around my house. So I just had that reminder, because for me, I was so playful as a child and I was so disconnected. So it was like, okay, I know that I have that within me. And I also work with people who might not have memories of a childhood. They might not have even been able to play. And if that's you, still knowing that that child is within you and they want to be freed. They are tired of, all the shame and the self-abandonment and the inner critic. So for me, it was like, oh, I want to show up for that girl within me. I want to create this second childhood in adulthood because I'm worthy of that and she is worthy of that. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to maybe just, do some silly movement like animals right now. And maybe this feels weird for my adult self, but I know like this is giving a gift to that child within. And I'm actually like healing in this moment. Another big thing I did, and this is for anyone who also, has a lot of shame, a really loud inner critic, which I did, was I actually started playing with a blindfold on. So I started covering my eyes because I was always so focused on the outcome. What does this look like? Whether it was dance, whether it was art. So I was like, you know what? It's no longer about what it looks like. It's about how it feels. So I'm just going to close my eyes. It allows me to like feel the movement that much more deeply and really get into it without being like, this looks like crap, or like judging it, or, oh, I could have done, because, as we over process, we overthink and overanalyze. So it's like, I'm just going to be in the moment and just like allow myself to feel. And another thing I did as well a lot and still do to this day every day is shaking. And I know it's becoming more popular now, but doing shaking meditations, like shaking off the seriousness, shaking off the self-criticism or whatever's coming up. It's like, because our body stores so much. It's just like letting it go. And I find I have clients who will be like, oh, this shaking feels so awkward. I look weird. It's like, close your eyes and do it. Because again, it's like taking off that inner critic. It's like, we're going to silence it with the blindfold so that we can really just be in the moment.
I love that. I love you said those two things because I was at a retreat earlier this year, and one of the activities we did was blindfold with a partner, and one partner doesn't have a blindfold on, and they're making sure you're not going to bump into someone else, right? Just keeping you safe. And then just said, just move freely. Do whatever your body needs. And in a lot of ways, when you're just sitting there silently observing someone's movement, there's like moments of like humor, there's moments of like relaxation, there's moments of like seriousness or sorrow. You can almost feel the expressions of the body moving through it. And I think that what you said there, because you blindfolded, now you get in touch with how your body feels. And it's so different. People just are we live so much behind our eyes and so much not in the sensations of our bodies. And I think people could spend a lot more time feeling how their body feels by practicing blindfolded movement safely, right? Make sure we're safe, right? I think that's really cool. And, another thing that I was thinking about too is when we break the habits of feeling that shame and that judgment, one of my favorite ways to get people to do that who can't crack out of that is play a little game called Mirror. I do this with my kids sometimes. And so you say, you do some movement and I have to do whatever you do. And then we switch and we do vice versa, right? And what's fun about that is even adults, they'll just start moving and then something will be funny and then they'll want to kind of chase that humor a little bit more, And so in a lot of ways, it just frees up this expression because A, you're not doing it alone. Someone else is doing it with you. And B, you're getting some interaction with another human being out of it, right? Which is really fun.
I love that. I think that this... Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I love that. And I actually do that with my groups. We do mirrors. So we do it virtually where they'll follow along. And it's interesting because some people will get nervous. They'll say like, oh, I don't have experience dancing. But it's like, no, it's just about having fun. You don't need to be a dancer. You don't need to get the movement exactly. And you...
Uh-oh.
What happened?
We'll pick it up I do that with my students.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
She is cute.
Yeah, she's fun. She's got a good energy. I really love the notion of that heaviness. I feel like it's such a problem. Like we're in self-development, so everything has to be hard.
Focus.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's fine.
My temperature has normalized now. I feel better.
That's good. And I've been taking saunas in the morning because I'm like, dude, I will just be like sitting here just sweating bullets. I can't cool off after a sauna. It's wild.
Well, so I take hot showers, but I have to do a cold dusting at the end because I can't cool down and even get dressed.
That's funny.
I'm like...
Yeah, that's funny. Me too.
But then I put on makeup, put on a turtleneck, and run up some stairs. Oh, there we are.
We're back.
Hello?
We're back.
Okay, I'm hotspotting now. My internet went down, so I'm on my hotspot. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
No problem at all. No problem at all. Once you get settled, we could just pick it back up with something like, oh, I'm so happy you mentioned mirroring because I do that with my students. That's kind of where we broke off right there.
Okay. Okay, I love that you mentioned that. I actually do that with my groups as well. So we do the mirroring on Zoom usually. And it's interesting because often I actually notice some resistance come up when I first mention that. So people will just say like, oh, I'm not a dancer. I'm not good. I'm not gonna be able to follow along. And they start getting in their heads and it's like, no, we're just going to have fun. You don't need to be a dancer. Actually, if you want, you can even pretend to like do your own thing. Don't worry about following it perfectly. It's really about letting go of the perfectionism. And everyone ends up like, this is always their favorite exercise. They have so much fun. It gets to be so silly. And then it's fun to give other people the chance to lead it as well, to build some confidence too.
Yeah. I love the letting go of the perfectionism. And I also love the conjunction of that and shaking at the same time. Because to me, something I like to teach people is tension awareness, right? And just the ability to say, where am I holding tension in my body that's unnecessary? And one of the best tools is just shaking it out. And I'll even get people to accompany that with a physiological sigh. And that's where they get real embarrassed when they're
like to make noises.
Shaking it out like that. But nothing I've found personally feels like it can just relax your body more than just some light bouncing and just that physiological sigh right there. But that perfectionism, we keep touching on that, right? Because so many people, it's going to be hard for them to take this podcast and integrate it into their lives. And so what arises inside of you? Like, what are the inner dialogues that people should be aware of that they can pay attention to and then realize, wait a second, this is my self-criticism, my self-judgment, my fear of being judged by others. What do you notice coming up?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I think you need to lead with curiosity and know exactly those thoughts aren't you. Those thoughts are your conditioning. So we can distance ourselves from them. But yeah, as soon as you start doing the blindfolded dancing or maybe blindfolded art, and for me, art was also a journey because I thought I was so bad at it. So I was like, why would I do art? I don't know how to do art well. And it's like, oh, art is just self-expression. Dance is just self-expression. It doesn't need to be good. But as soon as people start doing that, they'll notice the inner critic being like, oh, like, like this is messy, this looks bad, like this isn't good. And it's like, well, it's not supposed to look good. It's supposed to just be creation and freedom and self-expression. So as soon as you start, like, to be quite honest, now that I do it, I really don't have that voice as I'm doing it because of the practice. But I know when I started, I did. And I know I had that unfamiliarity. So for the people who are like, okay, I'm going to try doing this movement blindfolded, just notice the thoughts. Like you said, be curious about them. They are information, and meet them with them and just be like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. But, that's not who I am. That's not me. And I'm proud of myself for showing up despite any resistance or discomfort.
I think that's very key because I think, we are so critical of ourselves and others, unfortunately, at least in here. So this idea of like, what I hear you saying is like, you don't have to be a dancer. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to have any specific skill, because instantly when you said art, I was like, oof, I'm bad at art. Literally, that's what I thought. And you're like, I was like, oh, so that it pops up without me even spending more than a millisecond thinking about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm just not an artist. I'm not good at it. But if we're really honest and we go to like art galleries, some of the art there doesn't look like anything very fancy.
Some of it's pretty weird, huh?
So probably could have created that myself. So it's, I think it's really empowering, to like tell people like you don't have to be good at any of these things to engage in them. Dance doesn't have to be structured. I was a dancer as well. So this idea that it doesn't have to be choreographed and to the beat and exactly spot on. It's just movement. Why? I think obviously we have that in childhood, but where do you think that light switch like flips for us to where it's no longer fun? It's only about if you're good at this thing, then you can pursue it. If you're exceptional at this thing, then you can pursue it. Where and why do we cut it off?
Honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with schooling. For me, I have really significant memories in like early grade school, like even grade 1. I remember learning in art class, and it's like, this is how the assignment needs to look. You need to draw in this circle. This is what you need to do. And I remember just being excited and drawing outside of the circle and being told like, no, you don't draw outside of the circle. You need to do it in these parameters. So it's like, as kids, we're so tapped into our creativity and our imagination. And then slowly that starts, like that excitement and passion starts like being dimmed down. And I think with every grade, it just kind of gets worse. It's really fascinating. There's this study by NASA where by the age of like 2, 97% of kids are considered creative geniuses. And then by the time we are adults, it's like 2% of us. And so it's just like with time, and you notice if you go by grade, I don't have the numbers by each grade, but like with each grade, it's getting lower and lower. And I know there's a lot of new kinds of schools now, like Montessori, which I didn't do, that are more play-based learning, which would be really exciting. I think for school because, yeah, I do have a lot of memories. And I don't want to blame any teachers also because I know that's just the curriculum they were given. But I think stuff is being done. But yeah, sadly, it's just like schooling and I think assignments in academia, like things are right or wrong. We're getting graded for our creativity. It's not really being celebrated. Also, like I did ballet as a kid, and like I remember I had a lot of body issues come from that because I was being told I was too round, or I had to like at like very young, at like 5 years old, and being told, you know, just like the movement wasn't good enough, and all of these messages where it's like, okay, it's not about the expression, it's about how I'm performing it and how I look. And so it's actually really sad, but that's why, you know, it's my mission to get back to that joy in it now.
This is a topic that really just, I could feel my heart rate go up as you started to talk about this, because I think so many of us are so free when we're young. We're so free, and like you said, we're so creative, and society just beats the creativity out of us. And you know what's really interesting? My daughter was in a play this summer, and after the play they did this big award ceremony, and what I noticed was they were rewarding compliance. They were rewarding perfectionism over and over again, but they were going to give every kid an award. So I'm sitting there scratching my head. What kind of award is my daughter going to get? And they said, we've never given this award before, but we're going to give this award for the best boundary setting, because my daughter was there supposed to do a rehearsal or a show on Saturday night, and she had already done 2 Saturday morning and afternoon. She said, I think I'm done today. I'm going to go home. And they're like, no, will you just start the next one? And she's like, no, I think I'm done today. I'm going to go home. And I was like so proud of her, because I was like, there's the one award that wasn't rewarding compliance, right? And I think we lose our sense of self when we give it away to others because of that praise, right? And I so hope that over time, more and more people can recognize that this isn't our natural state of being. Our natural state of being is free. Our natural state of being is loving. Our natural state of being is creativity. It is not pleasing others because they think we should be doing something. And what's even funnier to me is if you investigate why they think that, 9 times out of 10, it's because their mom told them, and their grandma told their mom, and their great-grandma told their grandma, right? And so nobody has reasons for this after all. It's so wild to me.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
That almost makes me sad. It's because I'm sitting here thinking, like, as a mother, I'm like, when have I been too critical or, you know, focused on something like being right or wrong versus, but I think you really nailed it, like that school age, whether it's happening in school or at home or both, just this idea that things become now right and wrong. And I remember my kids go to a charter school, and it's K through 12, so I don't have to do multiple drop-offs. That's really that was the win. But what I remember when they started in the school is like they don't give grades for the first 4 years. So like K through 4, K through 5, there's no grades. They will, you know, they'll give you some assessments and show you kind of where they are in their grade level, but no grades. Everything is just done or not done. And I used to think like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I do think it set them up for just focusing on what they were supposed to be learning, not focusing on competing with others. But then it was great, but then 5th grade, it's right back to what we know. And so you're right. It's grades. It's right. It's wrong. It's lessening creativity in some ways.
Fitting in, too.
Fitting in. Yeah. So
Totally.
I see what they were trying to do now, but I don't know how successful they were. But, you know, those statistics you offered on, like, you know, children being creative geniuses at this age, and then, but like, that is, gosh, it makes me sad. I mean, for lack of a better word, it makes me kind of sad that we participate in that really unknowingly, kind of, you know, stifling all the creativity out of ourselves and our children.
It's sad. It's really sad. And, you know, we're talking a lot about this inner child. And I think something I loved about your work was how this movement and this playful movement and this getting in touch with yourself helps heal the inner child. And we haven't really touched on that a ton. So I would love to unpack that with you if you're up for it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so with inner child healing, I think just in case too, I don't like to assume. So basically, when we're healing the inner child, our inner child is the part of our subconscious mind that is still innocent and childlike. And they say our inner child is like our inner 7-year-old, and it's like our subconscious mind. So a lot of our childhood experiences and beliefs we adopted from the ages of 0 to 7 are really like running our life right now. So it's so important we do this inner child work because it is influencing our everyday. And so for me, it was like, okay, I'm healing my inner child, which was amazing. And I was like getting to the root of my beliefs and starting to rewire those and adopt new practices. But then I realized that a big part of inner child healing is tapping into your creativity and your playfulness, because ultimately I believe that's who we really are, and our spirit and our soul is playful. And that's what our inner child needs. And it's in a way they want it, where it's not performative. It's not, again, it's not about measuring our worth or being good at something. It's about that freedom. And so that's why I think inner child healing through play is really so necessary for the healing process. But again, like, it can get to be so heavy, which is why it's so healing. And every time we play, it's actually an act of self-love. It's an act of self-care. It's an act of saying we are worthy, we are important. Our worth is not dependent on an outcome or what we do or how much we don't do. And so, yeah, there's so many ways we actually heal our inner child and rewire our subconscious mind when we are playing.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that so many people are aware of inner child healing as it relates to, like, let me get in touch with all the pain of childhood, and let me like process that, and let's talk about that, and let's work through that. And maybe there's some repatterning there that could be helpful for a lot of people. I'm not saying it's not helpful, but very rarely do you hear, let's get in touch with the fun and the joyful and the free side of what it's like to be a child who's 7 years old again. And I have a 7-year-old, so I get to watch this kid just live freely and just have so much fun with her body and her environment and her creativity. And I just got to constantly remind myself, like, just nurture that, protect that. Don't let people take that away. And it's hard to be a parent and be aware of this and still watch it happen, because it is pervasive in society. It is constantly happening to our children all the time. And I think the best thing we can do as parents is just encourage them to be themselves, to not worry about what other people think, and to be an example of what it's like to express yourself in that way, right? I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, so beautiful. And that's why I think I also work with a lot of parents that come and they're like, I feel really disconnected from play, but I want to learn how to play again because I know I set an example for my children. And also it's like they're wanting to unlearn that perfectionism because they're starting to see it in their children. But as you mentioned, there's so many factors that contribute to that, like society and media and schooling and all of those. So as a parent, you can only do so much, but it's amazing. Like, both of the awareness you both have and what you are bringing to your children is so inspiring. Because I think even as a kid, like, I didn't even know what a boundary was or any of that. So it's really refreshing to see just like, where you're both at right now. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
It is. It's fun. It's also very hard.
It's extra work.
Because, they set those boundaries with you, and you're like, wait a minute.
I taught you this to benefit you, not to hurt me.
Not for me. You set these with everybody else, not mine. But, to that point, I just want to highlight this, because parenting by far has been the most difficult job I have ever undertaken. Like, nothing. PT school was hard. Nothing like parenting children, especially 3 of them with 3 different personalities. So I do want to just mention that the reason I think that we kind of beat the creativity out of our children is because we think we're going to keep them safe, right? We think we're going to teach them how to engage in the world. We think we're going to toughen them up. We think we're going to make sure they know right from wrong and what to do and how to comply in certain situations. And it comes from fear. It comes from a lot of fear and us worried about how people will perceive them or what they will have access to as they become, young adults and older adults. So I don't want any parents listening to this to feel like, oh, I'm so horrible. Like, we're all just trying to do the very best we can with the knowledge that we have. But when we come into new knowledge, it's very important to try to, implement that and make some shifts and changes in how we parent. And that's why I love that we do this podcast because, in the world of self-development, like I'm always thinking about what I can do better, how I can be more, but also resting in the fact like I'm good enough, I've already done enough.
Yeah,
you know,
you
so
gotta hold both.
You have to hold both, and sometimes it can be really hard to. But I really appreciate having these conversations to kind of remind me like there's still something you can do, you can gently implement into your day-to-day life and into your kids' lives that can help make their lives better and your life better. So I just appreciate you really sharing all of this, because it was just a really, really good reminder for how I could maybe show up a little different for them moving forward.
Yeah. And this touches on something for me with parenting is if I'm able to be present with my kids and free enough to be able to like live in their creativity, then I can tell they feel connected, right? They feel connected, they feel seen, they feel loved. And I think a huge thing that prevents adults from experiencing joyful movement and actually practicing it in their lives is this, I guess you could call it this like desire to always be accomplishing something, right? It's like in order to do free-form, joyful movement, you have to accept the fact that nothing will come from this. Play is not something where we like end up and we're like, okay, we did this thing and now we check it off our list. It's like we built a tower and now we knock it down, and absolutely nothing comes from that except for just the joy of connecting with another person.
You're not closing the rings.
Yeah.
You're not getting an award.
Yeah.
You're not getting a certificate.
I'm curious if you really touch on that with people. Just like you have to not accomplish anything in order to do this,
Oh, definitely, because the people coming to me are like high achievers, perfectionists who have a mind.
Tell me the best way to play. Tell me exactly how I'm supposed to be playing right now.
Yeah, exactly. And they want all the stats, which I can understand too, because like people are like, okay, if this is going to be worthy enough of my time, what am I getting out of it? What is the science behind it? How much more creative am I going to be? What's my memory going to be like after? Like they want all of that stuff, because it's so hard to just be in the moment and do something for the sake of it. And
that's where you got the NASA quote from, right? You started collecting all those facts and stats.
Oh, and I do a lot of like corporate play sessions as well, and like they always want the stats about like how much more productive are we going to be when we play, and
how much money will we save from this? Like,
totally.
I don't know.
So yeah, it's very, very interesting, and there is a lot of science behind it, but I think it's so valuable to let go of that and just be in the moment, because you are worthy of that.
I love that. So, what's your favorite way to play?
My favorite way to play is dance, but now I do less like competitive dance. I still have fun though, because I think it's still fun to challenge yourself, and so I'll still go to classes that challenge me. But it's like, okay, my worth isn't in if I do mistakes during this dance, it doesn't matter. Like I'm here to have fun and grow. And so yeah, I love dance. Like I love salsa dancing, reggaeton. My dad partly grew up in Venezuela, so I love Latin dancing. I would say is my favorite. And yeah, I just do it for fun. I go to Latin bars in Toronto to dance. And yeah, I also love like just silly movement and like being a giraffe or an elephant or just like being really weird and letting my inner child free. So I'd say that's my favorite.
I love that. One of my favorite things to do at night is put on some headphones, like noise isolating, right? So you're in it. Drop into some music, and I've got wild musical tastes all over the place, and then just dance. And if there's a moon outside, I'm outside dancing under the moon, maybe some howling, and it kind of turns into some yoga at times, right? It's just like whatever my body needs to do right now. It's like some beat, some stretch, some move, some howling, some sitting, whatever needs to happen. And I think that it feels so freeing, and it feels so good, and it feels so it feels so natural when you can genuinely embrace it. Yeah. It almost gives you a sense of how unnatural it is to feel this criticism or this self-judgment or this perceived judgment from others, which I did want to say something about that perceived judgment from others. I've used that word a bunch of times here because I love this. I heard this a long time ago, and it sticks with me, right? When we feel like others are judging us, I always tell people the 20, 40, 60 rule, okay? At 20, you think everybody's judging you. At 40, you start going, you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care if they judge me. And at 60, you realize they were never thinking about you at all. They were thinking about themselves, right?
That is so true.
And so it's just so important, I think, for people to let that shit go because, God, we hold on to so much rules because of the way we think other people think about us.
That is so true. Although I'm not going to be able to get this picture of Tyler outside with the headphones on howling at the moon. I must say, that one is going to be with me for a while, but I'm not judging you.
It's a full moon tomorrow night. You better believe I'll be out there, rain or shine.
I love it. I think my favorite way to play though is dance too. I just love to dance and I like to. I think in my former life I was a contortionist. I like to like stretch and see if I can get into like really weird positions. I do this alone.
I've seen you stretch every once in a while. I'm like, damn, girl.
I'm pretty flexible, and sometimes I'm like, I wonder if I can get this over there. Yeah, so I enjoy sort of contorting my body in different ways and sing. And it's funny because my middle child is very similar, and I'm always like, stop, stop, stop. So again, a great reminder to be like, Lisa,
time to join
and let her be, because she's extremely creative and she does a lot. She's taught herself how to be a gymnast. She didn't go to gymnastics until after she had learned like 3 stunts on her own, you know. So she's very in tune with her body and she knows her limits. So I'm a physical therapist. I worry about her neck when she does
right.
I just get all scared, but
these kids are made of bamboo, though.
They are. So, again, very grateful for this conversation. Just the reminder I needed.
So, Kara, before we go, let's pretend you got a listener on the call, and they've listened to this whole thing. They hear us all smiling and laughing and talking about playful and joyful movement and whatnot. But inside, they just can't shake that voice that's like, this is stupid, or this isn't for me, or people, you know, whatever it may be. Like, give us some words to just get them over the edge, just to do something, just to give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like looking stupid is actually a good thing. Looking silly is a good thing. It means you're going for it. You're living your life fully. Do you want to be 80 or 90 on your deathbed if you make it there and just be like, oh, I'm so glad I played it safe and like worried what everyone thought and just like never gave myself that gift of going for it? Like that was something that motivated me, honestly, when it was really awkward for me. It's like, no, like, I just want to friggin' like live life. It's so short. And so it's like, when I do look stupid or I feel silly, I remind myself, oh, okay, this is how it's supposed to feel. Like, I'm in the right place. I'm so lucky I get to do this. And like, yeah, if I make mistakes or I'm not able to do it, like, yeah, again, there is no such thing as a mistake or failure. It's not about being good enough. And I think just that ability to take risks and try new things is so beautiful. And when you have that playful mindset as you do it, where you're like, okay, there's no right or wrong. I'm just going to learn, and mistakes are part of the journey.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, because I think what people will experience as they get started is this feeling of like, oh, this is dumb, or I'm failing, or I'm doing it wrong. Yeah, exactly. And I think that just the notion of like, oh, that means I'm doing it right. Right?
Yeah.
The awkwardness means I'm doing it right, you know? And even just the awkwardness means you're showing up, right? And you should give yourself some damn credit for that.
For
you
sure.
know?
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been such a fun conversation. Yeah. Where can our listeners find you if they're interested in exploring this topic more?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at The Playful Warrior, or my website is theplayfulwarrior.com. You can find my group coaching there, my corporate play sessions. I have digital offers as well you can do on your own. So you can find all the goods there at theplayfulwarrior.com.
Awesome.
Love it.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing that wisdom. And you're just awesome energy with our listeners. It's been a fun conversation.
Oh, it's been so fun. Thank you both for having me.
Thank you.